Hey everybody, welcome to another IAEI News Live. My name is Thomas Dimitrovich and today is Tuesday. This is a recorded session. I am traveling out and about, out of the country actually, but I wanted to make sure that we have our IAEI News Live at 12 o'clock Eastern here on IAEI's YouTube channel. Today, I want to do two things. I want to cover I want to have a discussion about transformers. I did a presentation recently, and I had some really intriguing questions around transformer fundamentals of the application. I want to go over some fundamentals with you that I think are being missed a lot out in the field. I'm not sure what the misunderstanding is, but I want to go over that with you. And then for the last about 30 minutes of this program, I am going to include an interview that I had, or a discussion that occurred during the Charleston meetings at the NFPA First Draft Committee meetings. It was a conversation that I recorded between myself and Mr. Tim McClochie. So let's talk transformers and an interview with Tim McClochie on IAEI News Live, and it all starts now. All right, so I'm telling you that we're in a target-rich environment for understanding the National Electrical Code. Things change, some things don't change, but sometimes the NEC, in my humble opinion, could be written a little clearer. And we do what we can as people in the industry who are trying to implement and interpret the National Electrical Code to the best of our abilities. And we learn something from each other every day. So I had a recent presentation around transformers with an audience. And we had some really good questions regarding transformers and their their application. All right, so I'll tell you where I had a lot of dialogue, and I honestly get this dialogue a lot when it comes to the proper application of transformers and Article 450 specifically for transformers. Now, if you take a look in the 2023 code book, Article 450, transformers and transformer volts, read the scope. This was a point of discussion that we had, which was interesting, but this was a point of discussion that we had. And I'm telling you that in some cases, I was doing this before, and I hear this a lot. Article 450 only applies to a transformer. If you look at the scope, the article covers the installation of all transformers other than the following. It doesn't cover current transformers, dry-type transformers that constitute a component part of other apparatus, and that comply with the requirements for such apparatus. A good example of that might be a switchboard. When you'll see an integrated facility system where they'll put in a switchboard, you'll see panel boards, and you might see a transformer that this article does not cover that transformer that's in that switchboard. Transformers that are an integral part of an X-ray, high-frequency, electrostatic, these are things it doesn't cover. Transformers used with a Class 2 or Class 3 circuit. Transformers for electric discharge lighting. Transformers used for power-limited fire alarm circuits. And then transformers used for research and development or testing where effective arrangements are provided to safeguard persons from contacting energized parts. So the scope is very clear. Now, and I'll tell you how and how we get into this discussion. If you think about, we'll start talking about just trying to get to couple of the slides up here where overcurrent protection, all right, and table 450.3a and b. And it's typically in the 450.3b discussion because I think that's where most of our experience is. We deal with less than 1,000 volts, more so than over 1,000 volts, although you might see, 4160 to 480 transformers in your career. You might see 32.8 kV to 240 or 208 volt transformers, but you'll see a lot more less than 600 volt type of applications of transformers. So in most of my educational programs and most of the educational programs that I've been a part of in the past, we migrate straight over to the 450.3b, 1,000 volts and less, and we start talking about primary protection and secondary protection, primary only protection. So I'll tell you what happened during our conversation in our training program. And I would make the statement that we're going to talk primary protection only. And we say, if you do primary protection only, you're going to put primary protection no more than 125%. You can go the next higher, right? So if we look at the table 450.3b, it'll say currents of 9 amps or more, 125% primary protection. So my primary overcurrent device is going to be 125% of my primary full load amps. Okay, great. And then I'll say I don't need secondary overcurrent protection. And immediately, an individual or a few individuals in the class will start referencing Article 240 for overcurrent protection. And they'll say, well, wait a second, Article 240 will tell you about overcurrent protection of the transformer. And I'm like, well, hold on. Article 240 is a different discussion. Overcurrent protection for the transformer is done in Article 450. So we had this discussion. It was brief. But it did occur, and there was the discussion around the fact that Article 240 is overcurrent protection, and their comment was, when you think about a transformer, you have a primary side of a transformer and a secondary of a transformer. When you have primary only protection, the primary device, no more than 125%, has to do two things. First, it has to give you short circuit protection of the transformer for internal faults, and two, or even through faults, right? And two, it has to give you overload protection of the transformer. Well, our discussion, a few people in the class, and I'm sure here's my issue. When you're teaching a class, if one person asks a question, there's probably a handful of others that have the exact same question in their head. So you can't say it was only one. And I had a couple people bring these same topics up. But the one individual said, hold on, you can't say that Article 450, primary protection, 125% is overcurrent protection because overcurrent protection is performed back in Article 240. And my argument was, well, Article 450, you got to look at the scope of Article 450 and understand that Article 450 covers the transformer. And there is a section. If you go to, you got to get your spectacles, but if you go to 450.3, what's the title of 450.3 is overcurrent protection. And you're in Article 450, which deals with transformers, and we know which transformers it doesn't account for. But 450.3 is overcurrent protection for a transformer. I wouldn't go to Article 240. And here's why I think people are going to Article 240, is because they don't understand the fact, or maybe they do understand it, but they're not. And here's the other issue. These individuals are very smart individuals, and they know better. And I'm not sure why a lot of individuals, including myself years ago, I did the same. I fell into the same rut. But I would be looking at Article 240 and confusing, or looking at 450 for the transformer, the primary only protection and primary and secondary protection, and confusing that with Article 240, which concerns itself with protection of conductors. So the challenge that we have is how do we effectively communicate the fact that 450 deals with protection of the transformer, the application of the transformer, the installation requirements for the transformer. Article 240 addresses protection of conductors and protection of conductors in and around a transformer. So if you go to 240, I think it's 240.21. 240, I think it's 240.21. It's the only page in my book that falls out first. 240.21 is location and circuit. So it says overcurrent protection shall be provided in each ungrounded conductor and shall be located at the point where the conductor receives their supply. Now, that's a no-brainer when you're dealing with the primary overcurrent protective device, because that's a feeder that's feeding the transformer. The challenge comes in how do I handle the secondary side of the transformer when I have a conductor that's terminated on the secondary lugs of a transformer. So I have to say, how do I convey the fact? How do you convey the fact that 450 doesn't address the transformer conductors, 240 doesn't address the transformer? For some reason, a lot of people are confused by that. Now, I remember back in the day, before I really wrapped my arms around it, I would do the same thing. In fact, I do the same thing. I would do the same deal in trying to understand conductor ampacity versus the termination versus, say, a small conductor. Like, you'll love this. And this was actually on an exam of mine that I took. That basically you say, okay, you have a number 14 conductor. So you have to, you do the ampacity, you work yourself into a number 14. You've got to think about 110.14 terminations and the amp rating, and then you have 240.4, I believe it is, for small conductors. Is it 240.4? I want to make sure I get the right section numbers. I got a lot of numbers in my head. The small conductors, 240.4 protection of conductors, and then you have small conductors in D, right? So, and then when you look in D, it tells you a number 16, and there's a number 14. Okay, so the interrelationship between all of these sections, and I know I've heard people say, it's not for the untrained individual, right? The code is not for the untrained or the unqualified, and you need to go to my training class to learn this. But in my opinion, we can't fall back on that statement that the code is for a qualified person, and you need to understand what you're reading. Because if it's so difficult that my brain needs to hurt to try to figure this out, I can have a room full of people and have this debate and discussion around 450.3b deals with overcurrent protection of the transformer only, and it has nothing to do with the primary and secondary conductors. Then you need to go to Article 240. Actually, you need to go to Article 215, which will point you to 240, and then in 240.21, when it tells you that there's a specific section, I think it's C. C is transformer secondary conductors. It tells you how to protect the transformer secondary conductors, that you're not in 450 at all for transformer secondary conductors. Somehow we have to make it easier. And I'm not sure how to do that. But I can tell you there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of confusion. I still see drawings. I can't say a lot of drawings. I see drawings. I saw more drawings in the past when I was doing that work. And I'm sure they still exist out there, but I can no longer say I see a lot of drawings because I'm not doing that work anymore that would put the drawings in front of me. But when I was seeing a lot of drawings where you had a transformer, delta Y ground transformer, 480 to 208, and I had a 208 volt panel board that didn't have a main. And they would say, well, it's because, Tom, I'm in 450.3b. It says primary only protection at 125%. And then you go, well, what does that have to do with the panel board? Well, it's primary only protection on the transformer. Well, that's the transformer. Remember, 450.3b only applies to the transformer. And then you send them to 240, right? And you say, well, wait a second. How are you protecting the conductor on the secondary of the transformer when you don't have protection at the source? And so I send them to 240.21 Charlie for transformer secondary conductors, and they'll say, well, C1, protection by the primary overcurrent device. And they'll typically stop right there and say, that's why it's primary only protection, Tom. And you go, hold on, read what it says. That if it's not a delta-delta or a single-phase transformer, you're not protecting those secondary conductors with the primary overcurrent device. It tells you right there. And then you've got to go to either C2 for 10-foot long conductors, 3 for 25-foot long conductors in industrial installations, outside secondary conductors from a feeder tap transformer, and then secondary conductors not over 25-foot long. Try to explain that, and then you still run into a brick wall, and then you say, well, if that wasn't enough, it's a panel board. Let's go over to 408. 408 switchboard, switchgear, and panel boards, and you go to overcurrent protection of a panel board. There's your short circuit replacement panel boards. Overcurrent protection. So overcurrent protection 450. No, that's 450. I'm in 408. I want to go to 408. I go to 408 and you go to not switchboards, panel boards, overcurrent protection 408.36. And you look at 408.36b, supplied through a transformer, and it tells you where a panel board is supplied through a transformer, the overcurrent protection required by 408.36 has to be located on the secondary side of the transformer. And then he says, well, hold on, it's pointing back to 240.21, Charlie 1, and then you go right, and Charlie 1 tells you if it's a delta-delta or a single phase, then you can, but you can't because it's a delta Y ground transformer. And you would not believe the discussion and debates we had over that topic. So my message to you for today, I mean, I want to leave you with something today, because I was just, it was such a conversation. We probably spent a little more time on it than we should have. I don't know, maybe we didn't, because here's my thought process, 2 points. One, when you're trying to educate and teach, don't worry about volume. The goal isn't to get through the slides. the goal is to make sure that your students, those in the audience, understand. The challenge that you have is you're only trying to convince one person out of 100? Is the audience 50-50? 50% of them completely understand what you're talking about and 50% of them don't? At what point do you say, look, we're going to take this offline? But I got a lot of different questions during this session that I had from different individuals in the audience that really demonstrated to me that we are struggling, I think, as an industry. I'm going to go so far as saying as an industry, and if you disagree, put it down in the chat. If you agree, if you think that you've seen this before, chat it up. Let me share your experiences. But I'm seeing that I'm using 450.3b as one example of a state of confusion. And 450 deals with protection of the transformer. 450.3 deals with overcurrent protection of the transformer. I can have primary only, or I have primary and secondary. But I'm dealing with the transformer itself. That's it. Second, I got to go to 240 to figure out protection of the conductors. I got to go to 408 to determine the protection of the panel board. You do have to bounce around a little bit. I don't think there's anything you can do to get away from that. But I think you need the cookie crumbs. It shouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure out the code. I'll give you another example. One that I struggled with as a young engineer when I graduated, and I worked by the professional engineer that I worked under. He would, govern and review all of my work, right? And I learned a lot from that individual. And one of the mistakes that I would continuously make until I learned, here's my issue, is I learned the right way, not understanding why, until many years later. But I would size a conductor. I would go to table 310.10, 310.16, table 310.16, and I would look at the ampacity tables, right? And I would say, all right, I would look at my drawing. I would say I have an insulation of, I don't know, XHWN as an example. I would have an insulation of XHWN. I think it's XHWN. Anyway, double check. 90 degree C column, I believe it's XHWN. But in any case, I could be wrong. So I have a conductor that has a 90 degree C insulation. For sake of being wrong with XHWN, for all you conductor people out there that go, he doesn't even know what the insulation rating is. But anyway, 90 degree C column. And I would say, okay, the 90 degree C for, a 1-odd conductor is X. And then I would size everything to that. And then he would say, nope, can't do that. I'm like, well, why? Well, you need to use the 75 degree C column when you're landing on that, in that panel board. And I would go, oh. So I would look down and go, wait a second. The 75 degree C column doesn't cover an X, not XHWN. Anyway, I'm going to use XHWN. If it's wrong, please sue me. But XHW, I'll use the XHWN 90 degree C insulation. 75 degree C column doesn't have that insulation in the header. So I can't use the 75 degree C column. And he would say, no. Anytime you're going into a panel board, you need to make sure you use the 75 degree C columns. And I'd say, okay. So I put that in my mental note. Anytime I'm going into that panel board, then I'm using XWA, I'm using the 75 degree C column except for, and not the 90 degree C column. And then I would do my calculations and then he would say, then I would do another project and then I would get oh, wait a second, no, you're going into a switch, disconnect switch. You you can't use the 90-degree C column. And I'm like, well, no, you said that on panel boards. You didn't say that on switches. Well, it switches too. And then it was, okay, anytime you have an overcurrent protective device, anytime you have a piece of equipment that has an overcurrent protective device in it, you need to use a 75-degree C column. I'm like, okay, perfect. Now that gives me some more guidance. And then I went for quite a few years with that philosophy. And then I run into a piece of equipment that doesn't have any circuit breakers, and I use the 90-degree C column, and then, oh no, you can't use it there. Well, why not? Well, the equipment's rated for 75. And I'm like, well, there's not an overcurrent protective device in there. And they're like, well, it doesn't matter. Well, that's not what I was taught. Well, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard? Why do I use table 310.16 for two things? Why can't I go to 110.14 and get everything I need with regard to the terminations? Why can't I go to one spot? Why can't I use 310.16 for what, in my opinion, it's designed for, which is what a current carrying conductor is capable of carrying indefinitely? The numbers in 310.16, if I look at a 1-aught or a number 12 or whatever it is, a 500 MCM conductor, if it says that I can put X amount of current through this, that's 24/7, 365. Using a different column in that table is based upon the equipment I'm terminating or my termination. The equipment. It's not the terminal. It's not the terminal block either. I can have a 90-degree C lug in 75-degree C equipment. I don't need a 90-degree C lug to land a conductor with 90-degree C insulation. That was another discussion that we had during our meeting. They said, one individual said, well, you can't terminate a 90-degree C conductor on a terminal that's listed for 75-degree C. And I'm like, well, no, you can. Is it the right size conductor? Well, yeah, but it's got 90-degree C insulation on it. So what? I just can't use the 90-degree C column. We had this discussion. We had a few people have that discussion too. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh, we're talking to some smart individuals. I'm not saying that these individuals are not smart, that they're not educated. I'm just saying we're all reading the book. We're reading the same words. But there's too much. I'll say there's not enough breadcrumbs to help in the proper application of the book. The fact that I go to 110.14 and I have to use a table in 310.16, I have to use a table in chapter 3 and say, well, ignore the insulation ratings. Ignore that. You could have a 90-degree C insulation, but don't use the 90-degree C column. You got to use the 75-degree C column. That stuff has to go, in my opinion. It just adds confusion where confusion should not exist. I get the fact that we have to bounce around. When we go to 450, we have to understand we're dealing with transformers and the protection of the transformer. If you want to protect a conductor, you go to 240. Well, first you go to 215. If it's a feeder, you first have to understand, is it a feeder? Is it a branch circuit? Is it a service conductor? Then you go to the appropriate sections. Feeders are 215 or 225. Branch circuits are 210. Services are 230. And then if you're in 215 and it tells you need to protect it based upon 240, then you go to 240. And if you go to 240 and 240 says, hey, transformer secondary conductors need to be treated specially. Tap conductors need to be treated specially, and here's how you protect them. Don't confuse that with what's in 450. That's a fundamental thing, in my opinion, our industry can do better at. I'm not sure how we can do better at it. Being a victim of it myself for many years, not understanding clearly. And I've sat through classes and people have explained it. And I still stretch my head. I watched a conductor manufacturer try to describe how to calculate the ampacity of a circuit, not the conductor. Right? So you have the ampacity of a conductor, which is one thing. To say, what are the conditions of use? So you have how many conductors in a raceway? What's the ambient temperature around the conductor? That's one discussion. Then there's the ampacity of the circuit, which includes the terminations and the limitations based upon the terminations and both ends. It's complicated just in general. And I've seen some very educated people and very smart people that are close to it, that are close to the code, struggle with trying to explain it to someone. And in my opinion, when we struggle to explain something, it's an opportunity to improve the code. Because if it's confusing for us, who know the code, and you might say, well, it's not confusing for me. Think about the journey that you took to get to where you're at today. You didn't know it. When you first read the book, it was probably confusing. And it may not be confusing for you today because you took 20 years to figure it out, or 10 years. Or maybe you're a super genius and you knew it the moment you read it. I'm just saying. So anyway, that was our discussion. And 450, I think what I want to just make sure I want you to understand when it comes to transformers, and be prepared. So we're working on revising the transformer educational program, and we're going to put more examples. At least I'm working on more examples to be placed in the educational program as we update it to the 2023 code and all that jazz. But think of how the code is laid out. And if you have improvements, make a public input. All right, so having said that, transformers can be complicated. They can be simple. I'd love to hear your feedback, love to hear your thoughts on how do we make things easier, whether it be a transformer or circuit ampacity, transformer protection versus conductor protection versus secondary equipment protection, the number of secondary conductors and secondary equipment I can place as a whole nother discussion. Any ways you think that are easy, if you have methods to help your apprentices or your students or those you speak and educate on how to make this easier, share those in the chat, share them with me, send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. And if you want to be a part of helping to grow curriculum, let me know. I'd love to include you in the IAEI's efforts to bring some of the best educational knowledge to the industry. Now, having said that, I'm going to stay tuned now for a discussion that I had with Mr. Tim McClochie it was in Charleston, South Carolina, not Charleston, West Virginia, Charleston, South Carolina. During the code panel meetings, we took some time, we separated off. We were going to meet more frequently and try to record some more down there, but we didn't have a chance to. But I hope you enjoy the conversation that I had with Mr. McClochie on some of the key changes occurring in the 2026 code cycle. So we'll see you next week, hopefully live, here on IAI News Live. Thanks for joining in. Stay tuned for Mr. McClochie and I 2026. And we're talking NEC 2026 with Mr. Tim McClochie.
Tom?
How are you today?
Good, how are you?
I tell you what, it's been a rough week. Well, I've been here since not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before that.
I don't know how you do it. I mean, I'm into this, but I don't know. For that amount of time.
So I'm on panel 2. So what panel are you on?
Panel 3.
Panel 3. Now, panel 3 finished up?
No, we have...
you're all week, aren't you?
Yeah, we're supposed to be all week. I think we're going to finish up tomorrow. We have maybe 70 more PIs to go over.
70 more?
70. We're going to do the rest of 300, Article 300.
Okay.
And Article 590. So we did the heavy lifting already pretty much.
Okay.
So that was good.
So panel 3, I'm on panel 2. My panel 10 starts tomorrow.
Now, what did you have on panel 2 that you would
So
say?
panel 2, panel 2 does Article 210, and the biggest sort of debates we get there around AFCIs and GFCIs, obviously. We also have Article 220. Now, today's Tuesday, so today on IEI News Live, we aired a recording I did with Nihad El Sharif.
Okay.
So Nihad and I talked about the stuff that went on. We got through 210.
Okay.
What happened was, once you get into 210.8, you know how it is.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about how 210.8F. What did they do for that?
Ooh, 210.8F. So the cool thing we added there was we took and put a language in the parent text of 210.8F that basically says, as of September 1st, 2026, starting September 1st, 2026, you're permitted to use an AFCI or a GFCI or a special purpose GFCI.
Oh, really?
So what we did was, what made me feel good, and I told everybody on the panel, I said, my concern is, by the exception, we are basically falling back to a standard thermomagnetic circuit breaker instead of going back to some intermediate position.
Yeah.
Your fallback position when you have a conflict or a compatibility concern shouldn't be a standard thermomagnetic breaker.
Right.
So I argued, or I put a public input in for the special purpose GFCI.
Okay.
And I screwed the language up, but we fixed that. So that's what we ended up.
Did it go for a first revision, or did it get resolved?
It is a first revision.
Okay, good.
There's parent text up there. We didn't change, like there was an exception that basically permitted you to not have a GFCI on listed HVAC equipment. So what we did was we left that intact.
Okay.
And we went to the parent text and we just said, hey, let's make it optional GFCI or a special purpose GFCI.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's important too, is this is the first draft. So we have time for the public comment. We have the second draft. So, I mean, there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
But at least, you got it in there.
So and then the key thing is, what you do is you look at and you know this, right?
Yeah.
You look at the votes around the room. If you get something that's 10-9, so you got the simple majority,
Right.
but you need 2/3.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is the balloting is totally different than the simple majority vote here, hands up type deal. So that's the other thing, that things can change once you get to that stage.
Yeah.
But we're still early in the process, but it's going well.
Yeah, it is.
good.
Yeah, so now, okay, so that was my big thing. And then 220, we had some load calculation stuff, which they want to do demand factors for receptacle loads and dwelling units. A lot of those did not pass because we need more data.
Okay.
Everybody agrees, you're using a lot more energy efficient products.
Yeah, so I was going to say, is that really an issue? Has that been a problem? I would have thought the problem's getting lessened by the energy efficient products. We're using less energy.
So that's what they're trying to lower that.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
And again, and one of the concerns that I had, we had a presenter who started off saying that there are more and more loads going on the distribution system. But we lowered the VA per square foot in a residential dwelling unit, and they wanted to put more demand factors, which I didn't understand.
Yeah, I
don't know. And so what
I'll
we said.
keep my eye on that one.
Keep your eye on that one
that's
as moving
one.
forward. Even though they were resolved, it's something that everybody can go out and look at what the inputs were and what the substantiations were, because we need to understand what is the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Even myself and others on panel 2 said, look, could we lower? Sure, but what's the number? So
Right. And that's the thing, and that's the important thing, is get involved, right?
Oh,
that's what
absolutely.
we say. I mean, this stuff comes up, and you have time to put the public input in.
Yes.
Now we're at the first draft. You have time for the public comment.
Yes.
So again, it's get involved and add information to it. See what you can do.
Absolutely right.
So that's
so
important.
now, so panel 3.
Yeah.
I mean, I know panel 3 is not doing anything controversial.
We had a couple things that I thought were really good. The limited energy is we created 3 new articles.
So
for
help me
limited
understand.
energy.
Last cycle, didn't you? Let me ask you. Did you guys create the class 4?
We did.
Okay, so last cycle you created class 4 power limited,
Yes, we created that, and we also
and you created
made,
3 more.
well, what we did also, we created Article 722. to kind of take the general requirements out of the 700s, kind of like they did with the 800s.
Oh, yeah.
So we took the general requirements and put them into Article 722 to
Okay.
get rid of a lot of the redundancy.
Right, right.
So now what we did is we kind of changed that around with the limited energy, which
Yep.
includes Class 2, power limited, Class 3, Class
Okay.
4. So we created Article 790, which are the general requirements, 792, the power sources,
Okay.
and 794. Tentatively, right? We didn't create anything yet. We have to get to the end of the process.
Yeah.
But 794 is the cabling requirements.
But you have first revisions.
Yeah, we have first revisions for that. So
Okay.
that was one of the ones that I'm seeing a lot of changes in. And it's interesting because when I was an electrician, before I became an inspector, the 700s were intimidating to me.
Yeah.
I went into 760, fire alarms system
Oh, yeah,
for a little.
yeah.
But as far as the rest of it, I was confused. So I really like the direction we're going for
Sure.
the electrician because if we can make it simpler,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
going to hopefully get used more often. So,
Oh,
and I think
absolutely.
that's what we're doing with those 3 articles. So the limited energy work is really a big thing that we've been working on too.
Now, I understand they're restructuring.
Yeah.
So help me understand. I thought there was I thought there was a desire to get things out of Chapter 8 and put them in through 1 through 7.
There is, and there's actually a new Article 206 that's going to be signaling circuits, control and
206.
signaling circuits. Yeah.
Yeah.
And right now it's proposed to be Article 206, so that is the goal. And I think we're going to start seeing, we're obviously going to see that in the 2029, which is so far ahead. that
Yeah.
We're into 2026, but we're trying to prepare and do what we can to start shifting things around.
Okay.
Really, probably not adding information, but just relocating it in
yeah.
preparation. So
Sure.
so there's another article that made it through the first revision.
Wow.
So the limited energy and that Article 206, those are pretty good. Qualified workers, that was a big one for us too. How about you guys? I mean,
So we had discussions around the qualified person. So here's my thoughts, and I've talked to a few others.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about having a qualified person requirement in Chapter 1 in Article 110?
See, that's where I actually thought it should go.
Really?
I did. I really did.
Great minds think
Yeah,
alike.
and it's as an inspector, I like the qualified person. So I kind of, that's one of the things is sometimes, you're not on the same page as the group or you have a different opinion of the other people
Yeah.
on a task group. So I thought the Chapter 1, I think having a qualified person requirement, it would be great.
Did you guys talk about that?
We had a lengthy debate on that, and a lot of people thought that the qualified worker and the licensing shouldn't be in the NEC. It should be the local or state level. Also the 90.3 section, right?
Yeah.
Untrained.
Oh,
What if
yeah.
we put untrained, unqualified in that section right there? And we could do it in the 90.3 also.
That's not bad either.
So the 110, the 90, but that didn't make it through the first revision. That got shot down in our
Really?
in our code making panel. Yeah, you guys too, or did it make it?
Yeah, no, we didn't make any changes around the qualified person. We had some discussions. I can't remember where though.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing is there's so much going on. Like me and you, we were supposed to
yeah.
get together. It's been, I don't even know, what is it? Tuesday, you said?
Yeah,
What's
it
today?
was yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, so
oh
we
no,
were-
today's Tuesday.
Today's Tuesday.
Yeah.
So we were trying to get together since I got here and
I
you
know,
got here. And
I know.
it's just, so it's hard to think that you're in the room from 8 to 5 o'clock typically every day just talking about code.
And then task
public
groups in the evening.
And then the task groups in the evening and
Yeah.
time just flies. And
It does.
My
It does.
wife thinks it's a vacation, right? And it's
I know.
Yeah, it's
So
really not a vacation.
Bobby Joe was going to come down over the weekend because I was here. I will be here 2 full weeks, Saturday to Saturday
Yeah.
to Saturday, and so she was going to come down over the weekend. But we have Jake. Jake has had his surgery, so she couldn't come down for that. But then, I made a public input to panel 12 to create a new article, 627. 627. So Joe Bablow, who is the chair of panel 12, said, "Be prepared Sunday morning to present." So I told my wife, I said, "Look, well, she couldn't come anyway, but I told her, I
Yeah.
said, look, even on the weekend, I'm going to be on Sunday morning
Right.
presenting to panel 12, and then I want to be hear the debate and all this other good stuff." So Sunday morning comes, and they started in a different area. So I had to wait for all of that, all of Sunday, and then finally Monday afternoon,
Right.
he goes, "Hey, we're ready to start 627 discussion."
Yeah.
So let me tell you about the issue and why I went to 627. What happened there was we, as from an Eaton perspective, we have a marina power group.
Okay.
And we were getting customers who wanted to put electric vehicle chargers on a pedestal because they have electric boats.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, I haven't seen that yet.
So now my product line calls me and says, hey, what are the requirements for electric vehicle chargers in a marina? And I'm like, I don't know. So I start looking and I'm like, wait a second. What are the requirements for an electric boat charger? Because electric vehicles are defined in the NEC as a vehicle that drives on the road.
Right.
Boats don't.
Right. So what are you going to do? Is there another PI for a definition for that?
So I created, I can't remember, I called it electric self-propelled vehicles.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's what it was, something like that.
Yeah.
So I created 3 terms. I have the vehicle, I have the supply equipment, and power transfer, because
Wow.
you could have
Okay.
back and forth. So I created 3 terms, and then all I did was I grabbed 625, I copied that over, and I went down and I tweaked it a little bit.
So what'd you call it? What's it called?
I called it electric self-propelled vehicles instead of
so-
electric vehicle, supply equipment or something like that.
So it's not going to replace 625. It's going to
No,
be.
so I told panel 12, you have 3 options.
Mm-hmm.
One, you can change the definition and then just include other types of electric vehicles in it. 2, you can change the title of 625 and the scope of 625, and then create parts in 625 to address, because, well, when in my journey, there's boats, farm equipment. The John Deeres of the world have electric farm equipment there, and you know why they like that? They don't want the fuel in the fields.
Okay.
Right. So if you
Actually, I like that idea. Actually, I like that a lot.
yeah, and then the other, so you have the farms, you have golf carts, you have, what was the other one that was really interesting? Cat is coming out with an electric-powered backhoe.
Really?
And earth-moving equipment.
That's unbelievable.
None of that's covered by the code.
Yeah, right.
So I said, you can create parts for that, or you can create a new article. And why I liked the idea for a new article was it separates you from electric vehicles, which we all know and love, and it will help those who make farm equipment and other types of electric propelled equipment. You'll get them to the table because they're going to be interested.
Yeah, that's true. So you know what? That's the thing, and that's one of the other things is, you can have your mind or your mindset or you think about something, and then you talk to other people.
Yeah.
And like, you know what? You switch 180 degrees.
Absolutely.
Like, why don't we include in the article? And then all of a sudden, you know what? Yeah,
Look who's coming.
Better.
We have
Look at that.
we have code panel members. This is like I'm looking in an aquarium. Oh, look at the code panel members.
Yeah. So so you change your mind when you talk to people and you
Absolutely.
see other ideas. Then they make it easier.
You have a lot of people sitting around the table who have expertise in that area.
Absolutely.
There's more code panel members.
Oh, wait, there's more.
Yes. Yes, we are. We're talking.
Oh, it's just, we're the,
IEI.
Yes.
Yep.
you can have that part out.
No. I'll get your name and number and everything. We'll put it online.
This is live.
Is it Memorex?
Yeah. So that's interesting.
So that's the other cool thing about this. Like, you're in the hotel. We have all these different code panels members that are meeting.
Absolutely.
And we see all of these individuals
Absolutely.
out in all of these different IEI events and other events, and they bring their expertise to the table because not only are you sitting in that room together, but we're eating dinner, we're talking
You're
code.
talking code all the time.
All the time.
And it's great. And that's the thing about IEI too. And I love the shirts this year. We're all the same.
No.
So that's kind of neat. And
So you represent IEA. Who's your alternate? Or are you principal or alternate?
I'm principal. My alternate's Paul Saud.
Oh, okay,
So,
yeah.
So that's
I
the
know
first
Paul.
time, Paul. Great guy. I think he was on too for a couple cycles, I believe.
I think you're right.
And this is the first year that we're working together here, which is great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's so who are you with? Who's yours?
So my alternate is Brian Rock.
Oh yeah.
And now Brian,
He's virtual, isn't he? Though?
Brian wasn't able to make it because now they didn't have he was able to watch because he had the link, but he can't hear everybody.
Okay.
So it was really hard for he and I to communicate. And we were upstairs and I was getting texts in chunks, and it's hard when you're
absolutely.
the only one there to try to look at texts, try to understand because he's not hearing the conversation.
Right.
So it was
Yeah,
just.
and that's the
it
thing. I
was
mean, we're not
tough.
supposed to tape or video the rooms, but there really is a
Right.
lot going on, and you have to pay attention for your notes and to keep track of everything.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
it's hard to keep all that going. And I mean, you're on more than one panel, so you have other stuff that you just did, other stuff you're
Yes,
doing.
absolutely
So I mean,
right.
you guys that are on more than one panel, I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, and
I don't know
have
how
to-
you do what you do anyway, Tom.
So I have to prepare. So tomorrow I'm on panel 10, and there's.
Hi.
Hey there.
Hello.
That's okay. So I'm on panel 2 and 10, and my principal on 10 is sick. He was here last week for panel 13.
Really?
He went home early, and he's still sick. So I'm going to be solo on. So I was solo on 2, and I'm going to be solo on 10. And I won't be so low that they can't hear me on 10 because I do like to be vocal.
You know, I'll sneak out. I'll come with you, me and you.
Hey, yeah,
You
there
know,
we go.
I'll be your alternate. That'd be great.
Oh, I wouldn't mind it.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So that's the other thing too. Is sometimes panels, and I didn't realize this. Panel chairs or panels will recommend that other panels do a public input, and
Yes.
we had that with code making panel 6, which I think this one's going to be open to some public comment. We had damaged equipment. It was
Okay.
it was a new article. I believe it's 300.3C. So what it is it's equipment that's been damaged by water or fire
Oh,
or
I
something.
heard about this, yeah.
Yeah, so the chair panel 6, I think it's Susan, came to us, and Crystal Hunter did a little presentation to us about, what can we do? And that's one of the things that I really like is we had 2 informational notes of NEMA documents, how to evaluate water damage equipment.
But hold on. Help me
Yeah,
understand.
It's like,
How
and
is
here we
it
go.
an installation requirement?
Here we go, and that's the thing. So sometimes you don't see the tree through the forest.
Yeah.
I was so into it. I was so happy. I'm like, we need an avenue as in enforcers or compliance officers. We need an avenue because we get a lot of water break issues or hurricanes
Sure.
and so we don't have anything to go to. So it sounds great, and I'll be honest with you, I was all for it. And then I started thinking after, and I'm like, you know what? That's not an installation requirement.
No.
So I think that did pass through the first revision. Again, we have the public comment stage. I think we're going to get a lot of comments that belongs belong in the code.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, I didn't see it because it fixes a problem that's
Yeah,
not
I
the
know, well,
NECs.
So that's the So that's the challenge is when you're in the middle of these meetings.
Yeah.
So what was really helpful, there were a few people sitting in the back of the room, and we would make a change, and then we'd take a break, and I'd get someone come up and say, "Do you know what you guys just did?"
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what? What do you mean? Well, and they'd explain. They'd say, "You didn't
Yep.
change this one word. You have it as an and instead of an or."
Right.
And you're like, "Oh crap!"
It changes everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's when I'm expecting a lot of public comments, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Again, it fixes a problem that's not the NEC's problem.
Yeah.
But didn't see it there because So that was one of the ones. That was another big one I would say for us.
Yeah.
the
Well,
article.
that's.
So
Yeah,
what
that's-
else? What else did you guys
Yeah,
have?
I'm trying to think on panel 2. I know we had the load calculation stuff. I don't know if we had. I mean, we had our debates about AFCIs. We changed the order. So in 210.12, we have. Hey, you want to go live? You want to talk? So in 210.12, we have, you know how we had the list of areas. So we flipped that. We said, look, AFCI protection in a dwelling unit, except in garages.
Okay.
But then somebody reopened it, and I think it was appliance guys were saying, hey, you know what? We want to remove it from the kitchens
Yeah.
and from the laundries. But those passed, and we put those 2 exceptions in.
Okay.
But it was a 10-9 vote.
Yeah, so that could go either way, right? Because again,
Yes.
the hand
And we
vote.
didn't ballotable detail it.
Okay.
So that's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but in any case, I mean, we did.
Yeah.
You know.
And I mean, you guys were probably the same way. We had a lot of style manual issued cleanups
Yes.
that we did. There was
Oh, a lot
probably
of
more
that.
than I remember in the last couple cycles.
Dot two
Yeah.
is listing requirement, and
Yep.
dot 3 is reconditioning.
Yeah.
So we had to move. I don't know if you guys had to do this, but we had to move our existing dot 3, and I think we moved it to dot 14.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we didn't because last cycle we added articles and shifted some stuff around, and we haven't gotten to that yet.
Well, you better get on the shtick.
Yeah, we'll see tomorrow. Tomorrow's I think we're going to finish tomorrow, and I think we're gonna see some
That's
of
right.
that.
You guys were scheduled for all week.
We were.
So if you get done tomorrow, which is Wednesday,
That's right.
So you have 2 days of pure fun.
No, I'm flying back Thursday. It's my son's birthday Thursday, so I'm
Oh,
gonna
how
make
old?
it home. 13.
Oh, God. Oh,
Yeah,
13.
yeah. So I don't want to miss that one. So I'm actually
Yeah.
excited because I had already booked. I said, you know what? I'm gonna bet that we get done Wednesday.
Yeah.
And we should. So it's an early flight Thursday. So hopefully we make that. But
Oh, that's good. That's
but
really
it's great to be here again.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, absolutely. So, and we're going to
I'm
be
hanging
together.
with Tommy D.
Yeah, baby. So we're going to be together presenting in Chicago.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah, I have to buy my tickets, but I
Yeah,
got,
don't why rush?
Yeah, I know. I
You
mean,
got time.
I got time. You know, my problem is when buying flights, it's like I hate to buy them too early because I end
right.
up changing them.
Right.
You know, and that's
Yeah.
why I like to drive. You just go
Yeah.
when you want to go. But I got to go to NEMA and DC, and then I got to fly to Chicago, and then I'm not going to be able to fly back till Saturday morning.
Yeah, right. I think we're flying out the same. Yeah.
Well-
Yeah, because we're flying in Thursday, right? This is a
Yeah,
Friday
let me
event.
know what you got to send me your flight arrangements so
Yeah,
that
well, I
can
will. Okay.
align coming back so we can both go to the airport together.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it should be good. We're doing coach ages in Chicago,
Yeah.
and
8 hours.
8 hours of coach ages. Could
ages.
you
Oh.
imagine that? We're gonna have a blast. We're gonna have a blast.
I'm excited.
I am excited too, and we're doing it for the IEI, and then IAEI. I'm doing a presentation for IAEI in Costa Rica for Canina. Now, this is, I know what you're thinking. I know what
on.
you're thinking. You know, why don't I get to go to Costa Rica? Well, I'm already going to be there for Canina. I'm on the executive committee for Canina. And they were needing something for the program, and I said, hey, I'll do a presentation on behalf of IAEI.
Okay.
And I told Rudy, I said, hey, look, you know, let's start a chapter in
Yeah,
Costa Rica.
That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and we need more Spanish-speaking people creating materials
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
education.
Absolutely. Well, just in case you need me, I'm here for you. So I can.
I
I
might
don't
need
mind
my
booking
bags.
You know me. I'm fly by the seat of my pants.
Fly by the seat of
So
your
you know
pants.
me.
Absolutely. I know you. I know you. I love it.
You need
I
me,
love
I'm
it.
there.
It's all good. It's all
yeah.
good. So, yeah. So, I tell you, I can't wait to go home. I miss you know, I'm tired, and I'm just starting my panel tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I said, it's some people think it's a vacation, and you're here, and it's really it's the next level, and you're with a lot of brilliant people,
yeah.
and learning a lot as you're doing this too. At least I am. I'm learning a
I
lot
do
as I'm
too.
doing this.
I
and
learn
it's
a lot.
amazing.
Like we go down here to the restaurant in the hotel, and I'll order. Like it's nice to go out and eat, but I order a meal there, and then we sit and talk, and we argue out.
Yeah, right.
Like we get some people from panel 4. They'll come in and they'll say, you know, they were arguing about this, and they have a difference of opinion, and then we carry that debate there and we talk about it. And then people, you know, I got my computer there and we're looking up the code, and you're going down through it saying, oh, wait, what about this? What about that?
Yeah, that's the thing that's great is you can be in a room and you can argue and or you can have discussions, and then at the end of the day you have a cocktail together and you're talking about it, and and everything's all set. So that's the great thing. And the other thing is it's really hard to write good code.
Oh, it is. People think it's easy. They'll look at what you did and they'll say, what were you guys thinking?
Yeah.
Well, we were in the middle of this.
At the time.
I look forward to your public input.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Or public comment. So
public comment.
Take a look at first draft. You should be able to download it. I was just looking at this.
Yeah,
public comments are due in August,
okay.
but the first draft is not viewable till September.
Okay, yeah. So I was going to ask you when
Per
that
the
was.
website. It's in the website. On the website, it's September. Public comments are due in August. No,
It's got to be the other way around.
it's the other way around. August and September. August is
so you don't have a lot of time then.
No, you don't have a lot of time at all.
Yeah.
So you got to get the document, read down through those sections that you're passionate about, and you might be the healthcare person or you might be the PV person, but review the first draft, and make your public comments. Get them in so that we can get them on the table for debate. Because we're not perfect. In fact, I was just looking at some of the work we did. You can see it in Terra.
Yeah.
So I was going through panel 2 work and I found a couple things. I'm like, wait a second.
Yep.
We screwed this up. And I caught one during the meeting. I reopened. And
I think we did that twice today.
yeah. And I'm like,
so, and that's the thing. If you can fix it now,
Yeah.
and you can see it, you reopen it and you fix it. But to your point, what sounds good now after you look at it and you think about it, the damaged equipment That's one of them. So sometimes what you think here,
Yep.
after it gets out there and you get involved and you have the public comments,
That's right.
because we all have the same goal.
That's what I love. Here's the cool thing on panel 2. So we have the appliance manufacturers are there, and the HVAC manufacturers are there. And my perception was this is going to be a difficult conversation because I'm thinking these guys want to just get rid of GFCIs, and I'm worried about the shock hazards, and we're going to, this is going to be a butt heads thing.
Right.
We didn't have that,
No,
not at
no.
all.
Yeah, that's the
and
thing.
those guys were very interested in keeping shock protection on those appliances.
Yeah.
So, see, the lights went down.
Lights dim.
Look at that. And now this is what happened to us before. So you know what? That's a sign, everybody.
Last time it was a tornado, right?
That's right. Yes, there was a tornado going by. So I think that we should use this opportunity to say, that's it.
That's it.
So
Again, it's
this
it's
was
always
a nice
pleasure.
short session.
Absolutely.
And what we'll do is we'll have to break again. You don't go home until Thursday?
Right. Yeah.
So tomorrow's Wednesday. Maybe tomorrow night we can
We could do another update.
chat a little bit, and I can talk a little bit about panel 10
Okay.
and maybe some of our significant changes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Perfect.
Great. All right.
Mr. Tim McClochie, honor.
It's always my honor to work
Always
with you.
an honor. Thank you. And we have a blast. So thank you for taking some time out, and we'll catch you next time. Cool beans.